For decades, Arizona was the promised land of the Sun Belt, a place where the American middle class dream, a single-family home, a stable job, a comfortable retirement, was not just possible but practically guaranteed. The allure was a low cost of living, the endless sunshine, the booming, innovative economy. But look closely, and the shimmering landscape is starting to reveal a treacherous mirage. High-tech companies are pouring billions into the state, promising 720,000 new jobs by 2030, but the typical home value has increased by an astonishing 91% since 2010, adjusted for inflation. Renters are being crushed, with median rents rising 23% since 2019, while their incomes barely crept up by 4%. The data is clear. Arizona is no longer affordable, and by 2030, its middle-class squeeze won't just be a local problem. It will be a terrifying case study in the failure of Sunbelt prosperity. The crumbling foundation, housing affordability in a new light. The most immediate and devastating challenge to Arizona's middle class is the escalating housing crisis, a phenomenon that has fundamentally broken the social contract. The myth of affordability is dead. For many years, Arizona enjoyed a historic reputation for low housing costs, acting as a magnet for retirees, families, and businesses fleeing pricier coastal states. This period of relative tranquility is over, replaced by a frenzied market where home values have soared and incomes simply haven't kept pace. Between 2010 and 2024, the state witnessed a dramatic, almost unimaginable jump in property values. A recent study highlights that the typical home value in Arizona nearly doubled, representing a 91% increase after adjusting for inflation. This explosive growth has outpaced median household income increases by a staggering ratio. Housing values have risen about 7 times faster than income growth between 2010 and 2023. This statistical disparity alone is the primary mechanism dismantling the middle class. For the aspiring homeowner, the market has become an impenetrable fortress. In 2024, the typical home price reached approximately $427,272. To afford this home under conventional mortgage guidelines, a household needs to earn an annual income of at least $96,490, which is over 90% of the average household income. Historically, a typical Arizona household needed to work about 45 hours per month to service an average mortgage payment. Today, that figure is around 65 hours. This means nearly 2 weeks of household monthly work is dedicated just to the mortgage, a significant burden that drains capital away from savings, education, and investment in future generations. The rental market offers no refuge. In many ways, the pain is even more acute for those on the lowest rungs of the economic ladder. Rental housing and utilities have exceeded the national average cost for the past 3 years. Since 2019, renters' household costs have surged by 23%, while their incomes have lagged far behind, increasing by a mere 4%. The consequence is a catastrophic cost burden. For a minimum wage worker earning $14.35 an hour, affordable rent is $745 per month. Yet the average one-bedroom apartment in Arizona's current market costs substantially more. Data shows that a worker earning the minimum wage would need to work approximately 76 hours a week to afford a one-bedroom apartment. The visible societal cost of this unaffordability is the unprecedented rise in evictions and homelessness. In 2024, the state saw over 106,587 eviction court filings, the highest number on record. The number of people experiencing homelessness reached its highest level since 2010. These aren't just statistics. They are markers of an economic system that is actively pushing the working class and lower middle class out of stable living situations. As the middle class finds homeownership increasingly elusive, they are forced into a brutal rental market, and those with lower incomes are pushed toward the streets. The dream of stability is turning into a nomadic struggle for survival. The desert's reckoning, water scarcity as an economic break. The second non-negotiable threat to Arizona's economic viability and middle-class stability is water scarcity. The state's economic model is predicated on limitless growth in a desert environment, a fundamentally unsustainable equation that is reaching its breaking point by 2030. Water is not just an environmental issue. It is a critical infrastructure input, a factor of production, and an absolute constraint on population growth. Arizona's water supply largely depends on the Colorado River Basin via the Central Arizona Project, CAP, and local river systems like the Salt and Verde. For 2 decades, the American West has been gripped by what is now recognized not merely as a drought, but as a long-term aridification, a permanent drying trend exacerbated by climate change. Lake Mead and Lake Powell, two of the nation's largest reservoirs that supply Arizona, are at historically low levels, dangerously close to what experts call dead pool status, where water can no longer flow downstream to generate power or supply agriculture. The economic reality is that as Colorado River flows are reduced, the burden of water cuts falls heavily. While initial cuts often target the agricultural sector, the long-term prognosis for urban and industrial growth is profoundly challenging. Rapid population expansion in the Phoenix and Tucson metropolitan areas, fueled by the very job growth that is supposedly lifting the middle class, intensifies the competition for finite resources. A dynamic simulation model used to project future water shortage conditions in Phoenix found that policy action would be needed to attain water sustainability by 2030, even without additional climate-induced flow reductions. The continued commitment to low-density, large-lot residential estates, which use nearly 10 times the per capita water of high-density housing, is a direct conflict with long-term water management. The middle-class dream of a large suburban home with a lush lawn is literally drinking the state dry. By 2030, water scarcity will act as a sharp, unyielding brake on the high-growth narrative. Economic activity requires water, and a constrained supply will translate into constrained growth. The high-tech, high-wage jobs that Arizona is attracting, such as the massive semiconductor investments by TSMC and Intel, are water-intensive. If the state cannot guarantee a reliable, long-term water supply, the flow of corporate investment will slow, jobs will be jeopardized, and the promise of upward mobility will evaporate along with the water. The choice becomes clear. Either the state drastically changes its water use profile, or it faces a future of managed decline in growth and a shrinking economic pie for its residents. The two-tiered economy, inequality and erosion of opportunity. The third major structural problem is a deepening chasm of income inequality, which ensures that the benefits of Arizona's boom economy are accruing only to the wealthiest, leaving the middle class to struggle with the increasing cost of living. Arizona's economy is fundamentally becoming a two-tiered system, a high-wage, high-skill sector and a large, low-wage service sector, with fewer stable pathways in between. The state's economic development strategy has successfully attracted large-scale investments in sectors like advanced manufacturing, aerospace, and technology. The Arizona Office of Economic Opportunity projects a creation of over 720,000 new jobs by 2030, with the largest gains expected in education and health services and professional and business services. However, while some of these are indeed high-wage positions, the overall trend is one of uneven income growth. Arizona's per capita personal income in a recent reporting year was around $64,456, well below the national average of $72,425. More critically, the state ranks poorly in measures of income disparity. The ratio of the median household income at the 80th percentile to the 20th percentile, a common measure of inequality, places Arizona well below the national average for equitable income distribution. The data confirms a national trend of the top and bottom quintiles experiencing income growth that outpaces the middle class by more than double. For the middle-class Arizonan, this manifests as a decline in purchasing power and quality of life. Even as job numbers look robust, the types of jobs being created often do not offer a middle-class salary when weighed against the soaring costs of housing and health care. For instance, while high-skill manufacturing jobs pay over $90,000 annually, the leisure and hospitality sector, a major employment category, has an average annual wage of just over $33,000, creating a significant and growing gap. Furthermore, historic educational and racial disparities act as accelerants to this inequality. Forecasts indicate that if current trends are left unchecked, the number of adults in Arizona with less than a high school education, disproportionately Latino, could rise through 2030. This creates a workforce ill-equipped for the high-skill, high-wage jobs the state is trying to attract, locking a large portion of the population into the low-wage service economy. This feedback loop ensures that the economic gains of new industries will not translate into broad-based middle-class prosperity. Instead, the middle class shrinks, with those at the bottom struggling and those at the top thriving, a clear sign that the economic engine is powerful but fundamentally inequitable in its distribution of wealth. Infrastructure overload, the hidden cost of unbridled growth. Arizona's rapid, often chaotic, growth is not just affecting water and housing. It is straining the physical and social infrastructure to its absolute limit, imposing a hidden and escalating cost on the middle class. Uncontrolled expansion, without corresponding investment in infrastructure, is an indirect tax on the quality of life. The state's already clogged road networks are a major point of contention. Major metropolitan areas like Phoenix are defined by traffic congestion that directly impacts productivity and family time. Projects like the widening of I-10 and potential I-11 are necessary, but perpetually lagging behind the influx of new residents. This lack of adequate transportation infrastructure increases commuting times, raises transportation costs, and decreases the overall quality of life for the average worker. Beyond roads, the strain on public services, schools, healthcare, and energy is becoming critical. Arizona's commitment to public education funding has been historically weak. As the population grows, schools become overcrowded and under-resourced, which directly impacts the education quality available to middle-class families. This forces many to either move to expensive, well-funded districts or shoulder the cost of private education, further eroding their disposable income. The quality of local healthcare facilities and the energy grid are similarly tested by the rapid growth, leading to potential future vulnerabilities and service degradation. The challenge is funding. State and local governments must make massive investments in utilities, water lines, roads, and healthcare to accommodate the projected population surge. Without modernizing the tax system and securing significant federal and local funding, the required investments will fall short. The result will be a decline in public goods, a tragedy of the commons, where the shared infrastructure of the state deteriorates under the pressure of unmanaged growth. The middle class, which relies heavily on high-quality public services, is the most vulnerable to this decline. Their dream isn't just about a home. It's about a community and a functioning state, and that structure is under severe duress. The tipping point, 2030 and beyond, the convergence of these four structural crises, unaffordable housing, water scarcity, income inequality, and infrastructure overload, is what sets the stage for Arizona's biggest nightmare by 2030. The year 2030 is less a definitive date and more a tipping point. By that time, the current economic momentum will hit the unyielding wall of physical constraints. If housing construction continues to lag, the current estimated housing deficit of over 56,000 units for the entire state will remain intractable, keeping prices artificially high and locking an even larger percentage of the population out of homeownership. The Common Sense Institute noted that, given the current pace of permitting, the state is not on track to close the current deficit, which earned it a D rating on the housing report card. Simultaneously, the demographic forces of an aging population, as the baby boom generation retires, will put downward pressure on the labor force, making the state increasingly dependent on net migration to sustain job growth. Yet, how can a state attract new residents to fill 720,000 jobs if it cannot offer them affordable housing or a guaranteed water supply? The middle-class exodus, driven by cost of living, could begin to counteract the influx of high-wage workers, leading to labor shortages in critical sectors and a reduction in the state's projected economic growth. The long-term forecast suggests that growth in Arizona is already expected to slow significantly over the next 3 decades compared to the past 30 years. The core challenge is not the absence of economic activity, but the absence of inclusive prosperity. Arizona's failure to manage its growth and equitably distribute its wealth means that its success is built on a narrow foundation. For the working and middle class, the promise of the Sun Belt is already a lie, manifesting as increased hours worked, crushing rent burdens, and a perpetual feeling of financial insecurity. The cautionary tale of Arizona is that rapid, unchecked growth fueled by major corporate incentives, without commensurate public investment in housing, water infrastructure, and education, simply magnifies existing social and environmental vulnerabilities. By 2030, the middle class in Arizona will be a smaller, more financially stressed group, serving as a stark warning to other fast-growing Sunbelt states. An economic boom that fails to house and sustain its own workers is not a dream. It's a time bomb.